Hey, Spaces, welcome to this week's homework review where our skill is focusing on converting fractions and decimals. Remember, we are coming off of dividing decimals, so building on that skill, and our goal is heading into fractions. So this is almost a bridging skill to get us between the two to make sure that we are solid in our understanding. Now, two things that you'll see in the top is one, just a little visual reminder of how we go from fractions to decimals. Remember that the top is divided by the bottom. So our top, our numerator should be going inside of the division house. Our bottom, our denominator should be going outside of the division house. Now I know that putting the smaller number inside and the bigger number outside goes against what our brain tells us to do. So we need to be very careful when we set these up. Because we are creating a decimal, we are going to put the smaller number inside. I know that our brain is telling us to put the bigger number inside, so make sure you're taking the time when you're setting this up and really thinking it through. When we are going from decimal to fraction, we're really going to lean into our understanding of decimal place value, because if we know the place, we can easily find our denominator, and then all we need to do is rewrite our decimal as our numerator. So let's dive in here. The first one that we're looking at is 72 over 100. It's a fraction, so that tells me that I'm going to a decimal. I know that my place value is the tenths and the hundredths. Using that as my guide, I see that underneath my denominator is 100, which means that the last digit of the number I have needs to go in that place value, because the last digit gives us our name. So if I'm going to write this as a decimal, I'm going to put a 0 in the ones place, a 7 in the tenths place, and a 2 in the hundredths place, because when I read this, I would say 72 hundredths. Now, sliding over here, we have decimals to fractions. This first place value is the tenths place. And what do I have in the tenths place? I have a 3. So I would write this as a fraction, 3/10. That one was easy peasy. Sliding over here, 7 is the tenths place, the 0 is the hundredths place. I know that the last digit gives us our name, so our denominator is 100. And how many hundredths do we have? 70. Over here, 25 is our denominator. We have some options. I could divide this, setting it up with 13 on the inside and 25 on the outside. I could divide in. My preference is always the easy way. I think to myself, how can I make this 100 or 10 or 1,000? Because I know that if I have 100, a 10 or 1,000 is my denominator. All I need to do is write the number on top in the place value that says its name. So for me, if I know that I multiply by 4 to get 100, I would do 13 times 4. When I do that, I get 52. Now this can easily be written as a decimal. 52 hundredths. Remember that last digit is in the place value that says its name. We have 2 more down the bottom here. Let's see if I can get them to show up. There we go. So again, I have 50. I could set it up as 47 divided by 50, but I'm going to take the easy way out and get myself to a denominator of 100. 50 times 2 gives me 100. 47 times 2 gives me 94. As soon as I have my hundredths place, all I have to do is write my decimal, making sure the last digit is in the place value that says its name. The 4 is in the hundredths, which means that this is 94 hundredths. And then we have a tenth. How many? 1 1/10. That is the end of your first page. If you have any questions, please bring them with you to class. If this is as far as you've gotten, please go ahead and stop your video. If you're ready for the next one, hang tight, because we are going to jump right in. Welcome to page number 2 for this week. Sweet faces again, still converting fractions and decimals between the two. Remember, when we're going from fraction to decimal, we have some options. If it is not beautiful, we can divide it out by putting the top number on the inside and the larger number outside. Now, if this was an improper fraction, meaning the top was bigger, sometimes the bigger number will go in, but for what we're working with, smaller numbers going inside, larger numbers going outside. For this first one, I'm going from a decimal to a fraction. I see that the second digit is in the hundredths place. How many hundredths do I have? 32. So this would be 32 over 100. Come over here. This is already over 100. So that tells me that my last digit has to be in this place value, 29 hundredths. Remember, the last digit gives it its name. This 4 is in the tenths place. Denominator gives it its name. How many do we have? We have 4. I'm always trying to work smarter, not harder, right? So if I do 25 times 4, I'm going to get 100, which means I can do 4 times 4 to get 16. 16 over 100. Down here, the 6 is in the hundredths place. How many do I have? I have 56. And I know my hundredths place has to have the last digit. Be careful with this one. I only have one digit on top. That digit has to be in the hundredths place to give it its name. We know when we have empty spaces, 0 comes to the rescue. This is 3 hundredths. This is the end of page number 2. If this is as far as you've gotten, please go ahead and stop. If you are ready for page number 3, then hang tight, because here we go. Page number 3, looking at converting fractions and decimals. Our first one here is 98 hundredths. The 8 is in the hundredths, the place value that gives it its name. How many do I have? I have 98. I have a 6 in the hundredths place. Be careful. I have 2 place values and 1 digit. So I need to make sure that this 6 goes in the last place value, the one that gives it its name, and I fill in an empty spaces with zeros. 6 hundredths. 43, the 3 is in the hundredths. How many do I have? I have 43. This is 43 hundredths. Always trying to get to 10, 100, or 1,000 to take a shortcut. 25 times 4 gives me 100. 1 times 4 gives me 4. I have 4 hundredths. I can write that as a decimal as 0.04. 4 hundredths. Coming down here, 27. The 7 is in the hundredths place. How many do I have? I have 27. 27 over 100. And then this last one, I can get it to 100 by multiplying by 5. 8 times 5 is 40. I can write this as 40 hundredths. The 0 is in the hundredths place. If you have any questions, please bring them to class. This is the end of page number 3. All right, Levs, moving on to page number 4. If you're not ready, please go ahead and stop. Remember, you can always rewatch these or bring your questions to class. Starting with 2 tenths, I need to have a 2 in the tenths place. It looks like that. 27, the 7 is in the hundredths place. How many do I have? I have 27. I have a 6 in the tenths place. Looks like that, 6 tenths. 50 can be multiplied by 2 to get 100. When I do 18 times 2, I get 36. 36 hundredths is my decimal. If I multiply both of these by 4, that will get me to 100. 3 times 4 is 12. This would be written as 12 hundredths. And then we have 49. The 9 is in the hundredths place. How many do we have? We have 49. That brings us to the end of page number 4. Please bring any questions with you to class. Love bugs, last page for this week. 9. The 9 is in the tenths place. 9 tenths. 25, 1,000. 25 over 1,000. Be careful with this one. We've talked about the tenths and the hundredths. We've talked about how these place values continue. This would be the thousandths place. Writing it backwards to make sure that the last digit is in the place value that says its name. 25 thousandths. Again, tenths, hundredths, thousandths. Going down here, we have 462 thousandths. Our bottom is 1,000. Our numerator is 462. I need to shrink my screen a little bit because we're down to the last page. Sorry, kiddos. All right, there we go. So then we have 2 over 20. I can multiply both of these by 5 to get to 100. 2 times 5 is 10. This would be 10 hundredths. 396, the 6 is in the thousands place. My numerator is 396. And then the last one, I have 43. The 3 is in the hundredths place. 43 hundredths would be my final answer. If you have any questions, please bring them with you to class. Otherwise, have a fantastic weekend, and I will see you guys next week. Goodbye, sweet faces.